It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio today, I'm joined by Lance Richardson. He's the state's attorney for Queen Anne's County. Prior to the interview starting, we were talking about the lawsuit that has now come back in favor of Queen Anne's County, and that was about the Hippocratic Growth organization that wanted to open a medical marijuana facility in Graysonville.
Correct.
And not that you have a lot to do with this, but you do have some say with regard to anything criminal that goes on in Queen Anne's County. And you said you had some concerns about where they were thinking of opening.
I did. I wasn't an advocate for the Graysonville area. If they are going to have a medicinal marijuana facility in Queen Anne's County, I would rather it be Northern County in more of a rural, isolated area. Graysonville, and it's in the past, has had quite a bit of drug activity, illegal drug activity and issues, burglaries and related issues. So it wasn't my ideal location. You
said that there had been an open-air drug market there in the past.
That's correct. Back when crack cocaine was prevalent, Graysonville was the epicenter of crack dealing in Queen Anne's County.
And so those on the other side of this argument would say, do you think that a medical marijuana facility goes hand in hand with a criminal element?
I don't know enough to make an educated statement on that. I do know marijuana is often correlated to other drug use and other criminal activities. I was somewhat apprehensive that it may be a target of robberies or potentially other individuals trying to profit from the medicinal marijuana selling other substances in the near vicinity. So there's a school nearby that location where they wanted to place it, a lot of residential homes. I just didn't think it was a good fit for that location.
And going forward, do you see better fits in the county?
There are a lot of isolated rural areas in Queen Anne's County that would be accessible, and I think just get it away from schools. I believe the proponents of it wanted it closer to a medical facility, but there is a Nesbitt Road medical facility right off 301 that you could locate it somewhere in close proximity without being close to schools or communities.
So you had said you fall on the more conservative side of this. You're a little skeptical of medical marijuana at this point. You probably do realize it's coming.
Right. I think we're following, if you look historically at Colorado, we're somewhat following their path. We've decriminalized small quantities. Medical marijuana seems to be expanding. I think we may be, as a state, headed towards legalization. And Colorado's had a lot of issues with driving while high, a lot of fatal accidents. Addiction is way up. So I do believe there's a legitimate purpose for medical marijuana. I'm just apprehensive that it's going to be expanded beyond its real needs and what it should be truly used for.
Mm-hmm. All right. What are the biggest problems in Queen Anne's County?
Queen Anne's County, like Anne Arundel County, our heroin epidemic is tragic. It's widespread. We're losing young people. We had a double overdose recently of two 20-year-old men. There's many, many overdoses that don't result in fatalities that, because our police officers carry Narcan, we're bringing so many back. But the heroin is fueling thefts, burglaries, other criminal activity. So it's a huge problem. And we have a couple ways that it's a problem. One is Kent Island can readily access Baltimore City. It's a 50-minute drive in the evening, cheap, open-air drug market, probably the heroin capital of the country, I've heard, Baltimore City. Additionally, Middletown, Delaware, on the other end of the county, is a huge heroin distribution point.
I've
coming
heard
down
that from Wilmington and points north. Yeah.
Right. So it's
so you're surrounded.
And on a larger scale, I believe we need to seal the borders because it's being imported. But once again, when there is a demand, there's always going to be those willing to take the risk of making the profit. There's people willing to risk lives to get this product. It's so lucrative. Heroin, one of the most lucrative commodities out there. Funny, I saw a study that cost versus profit. You have popcorn in heroin that cost nothing to produce, but they bring in
Interesting.
In.
I thought the large majority of heroin comes from poppy fields in Afghanistan. So sealing borders in Canada and Mexico, are you saying, would stop that?
Doesn't mean that it won't come in through Mexico, even though it's not produced there. But you think about our country, huge, vast borders, the East Coast, the West Coast. It's easier said than done, sealing the borders. All I can do at my level, local level, is vigorous investigation, prosecution of the dealers. We've had 2 wiretap investigations.
And that yielded quite a few arrests,
yes.
One of them, yeah.
The first one, we had 17, I believe, felony convictions. This one, we have 32 individuals charged. We're taking care of our dealers at a local level. But what I've said before is drug dealers are it's like pulling weeds. You pull a whole batch of weeds one week, you come out and there's a whole new batch the next week, and that's people willing to step up for the profit.
And users, viewing users, addicts, this is a mental health crisis, not a criminal issue. Are you seeing this the same way, or are you...
It's a huge part of the problem that there's a lack of treatment facilities. We don't have long-term treatment facilities that are government-sponsored in this state. When we court order or commit people to treatment, they're short-term treatments. The new trend is the Vivitrol injection, which we're having good success with. That's the injection that takes away the opioid cravings. It takes away the high. We're releasing individuals from our detention center with a Vivitrol injection. I'm told they cost approximately $1,000 a shot.
And last for how long?
30 days.
So in 30 days, then what?
Get another shot. Keep them on this maintenance.
And how do they pay for this?
Right now, our health department is providing them, so I'm not sure logistically
how it's going to continue.
But I think if the pharmaceutical companies could potentially reduce the cost of those shots, it might be a huge step in a solution of this crisis.
Interesting. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about another tool in your arsenal, which is prosecuting the dealers for the deaths of those that do overdose.
Correct.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. This is Donna Cole in the studio today. I'm with Lance Richardson, who's the state's attorney for Queen Anne's County, and he, like every other state's attorney across the USA, is battling this horrible heroin epidemic, opioid epidemic. Another tool in your arsenal, and I don't know who else is doing this. You are prosecuting dealers for overdoses, and one of which most recently, Mr. Johnson, who is indicted in Queen Anne's County Circuit Court for involuntary manslaughter, reckless endangerment, possession of heroin with the intent to distribute, and possession of heroin in Roe's death. That manslaughter is a big charge.
Yes.
Do all state's attorneys do this?
No, not currently.
Okay, why not?
Well, there is a discussion among our state's attorney association. We're going to try to either everyone get on board with prosecution. There is a federal charge right now for distributing drugs that result in a fatality. We do not have a similar state charge at this time. But with manslaughter, it's a lesser charge of murder where you don't have the element of malice. But there is basically no lawful justification for distributing heroin and fentanyl, so that if you're going to do that, and my theory is you must know with the media, with everything going on in the news about the fatalities and the dangerousness of this substance, that if you're going to distribute it, knowing there's a very likely chance that someone's going to perish, that in my opinion it fits the definition of manslaughter. Being so grossly negligent with someone else's life by giving them this product. You can draw a lot of analogies. Giving a loaded handgun to a child who has no training, there's a very high likelihood of something awful happening. Right. Same thing with these drug dealers. So we are going to pursue this. We also pursue the distribution aspect of it. So it's a twofold prosecution of serious felonies, and it's going to up our chances for successful accountability for these drug dealers.
Now, how did you come to this? Were you the sheriff and a bunch of the people working for you sitting around a table and saying, what can we do? Here's an idea. No one else has done this before. How did you come to this conclusion?
I had heard that potentially Worcester County, Ocean City, was prosecuting for manslaughter. But the first one we charged resulted in a conviction for the distribution of the heroin. However, in prosecution, sometimes just having the added element of a manslaughter charge makes it easier to obtain a conviction for the distribution. And technically, believe it or not, the distribution carries more potential prison time than the manslaughter. So
the thought is, if you throw a blanket of charges, you're going to get more something.
But ethically, I have to make sure there's probable cause, and that's what the grand jury's for. If they approve, they apply the law to the facts. And Mr. Don Diego Brown sold heroin to a subject by the name of Ringgold who perished. He pled to the distribution and received 17 years in prison for that, whereas manslaughter only carries up to 10 years in prison. So in that scenario,
it made sense to go for that.
Right. And, I'm not sure how the pending cases are going to turn out, but, we want the word to go out in Queen Anne's County that we're going to hold you accountable for these deaths.
So there hasn't been one brought to trial yet? You'll be...
One that has, 3 are pending right now.
Okay.
We have not actually tried one yet. So
I'm guessing you didn't get pushback from the sheriff.
No. Sheriff Hoffman and I work collaboratively. We have a great working relationship, his office and mine. We work together to try to find solutions, so it's a great partnership.
And how many prosecutors do you have on your staff?
Myself and 4 others.
And it's interesting to me how the system works. Do you just hand down these decisions and say, this is what we're going to do?
No.
Do they talk, because I'm sure you have some younger people on your staff, and do you talk this through, and are there some that say, I don't know, how do we go about? Go ahead.
Sure. No, my prosecutors have had the same team for all of them have been there 5 years or more now. There's very little turnover, and we work together. We brainstorm, we bounce ideas off each other, apply the law, and say, do you think we can make this work? Basically, they're very bright prosecutors I have working for me, so I trust their judgment. And we reach out to prosecutors in other jurisdictions and say, what's working here? What's your theory? So Bo Oglesby down in Worcester County has shared information with us. So no, I do not arbitrarily make these decisions.
How did you get into this field?
I started out as a public defender, spent 7 years there, and then when Frank Cradaville became state's attorney in Queen Anne's County, he brought me over as a deputy. Then he went on to Congress, and I ascended to state's attorney. I've been there for the last 9 years, I suppose. Time gets away, but 22 years just in the criminal justice field. So this is what I do.
Do you miss the other side at all?
No. Public defenders have a very valuable role to play, but I much prefer being a prosecutor, helping victims of crime, getting justice. As a public defender, many times I'd get a good result for a client, and I'd see him again in a month with the same charges. It was a bit of a catch and release scenario. So no,
So you didn't feel like you were making the difference that you are currently making in your office?
Correct. I grew up in Queen Anne's County, so I like preserving, the community I live in.
When we come back, we're going to talk about how that community has changed over the years. This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me today is the Queen Anne's County State's Attorney, Lance Richardson. And on break, we were just talking about our mutual love for animals. You do have a love for animals.
Yes. My mother raised me with all kinds of pets, every nature of dog, cat, hamster. So my office does prosecute many animal neglect and cruelty cases.
You said there was a horse incident?
Horses, yes. A lady who could not care for a large herd of horses. We had to bring the Humane Society of the United States in to help. But basically, I tell people, if you cannot afford animals, do not take on the obligation. It's a huge obligation with the vet bills, the food, the care, the attention. And I hate to see neglected animals. We have an aggressive animal control agency in my county, and we work hand in hand to rescue dogs and animals whenever they're neglected.
Good. Thank you for that.
Sure.
You went to Queen Anne's County High School?
Yes.
That was more than a few years ago, I'm guessing.
30 plus, yes.
You've seen Queen Anne's County change a lot over the years.
Yes.
For the better?
In some ways for the better, in some ways it's become urbanized, but I grew up on Kent Island when there was no Kent Island High School, so we got shipped 26 miles each way to Queen Anne's County High School. It's much more rural. We have more urban problems than we used to, but still a very safe place to live.
That said, you just rolled your eyes when I said even Queen Anne's County High School has had problems, such as a stabbing earlier in the year, and
right.
You said...
They were from Cecil County for a playoff football game, so they were not my locals. But still, there are some shootings and violent crimes at times, usually drug-related. We have very few homicides, average probably one a year, which is, I'd like to have 0, of course.
Right.
But compared to other jurisdictions, we are still safe. We've had an uptick in nuisance crimes, breaking into cars, stealing change and valuables, and those are often drug-related. We had one recently where 3 men from Prince George's County came over, and they were going through a community, and our locals tracked them down and caught them because they don't tolerate that.
It's the Eastern Shore.
Right, exactly. You're going to be held at shotgun if you try this sort of thing on the rural Eastern Shore. Not everyone has a shotgun, but we still have quite a few that do.
So you've seen this change. You've also seen the rates in our prison systems skyrocket.
Yes.
To the point of overcrowding, to the point of what do we do now? What do we do now?
The detention center is also the new drug treatment facility. That's how it's turned out. Because of a lack of long-term treatment, addicts who cannot get help and cannot stay clean end up in our detention center. We are well over capacity in Queen Anne's County. We also have 2 very tough judges, but we need more long-term treatment facilities, and it's all a matter of money. Where is the government going to place its priorities? There's only so much tax money to go around, and when it gets bad enough, then there's going to be an emphasis on more long-term treatment. But we don't have it now.
And so because we don't have it, what do you do? Are there cases that you are now saying, well, let's see what other...
There is an emphasis on treatment for addicts, of course. However, if addicts are victimizing others and not getting clean, then we have to warehouse them. So it takes that discretion as a prosecutor to figure out what's in the interest of justice, what do I do to rehabilitate this person, but also to punish them. It's a fine... basically equation to figure out what goes where and how do we rehabilitate, punish, protect society. So it's not an easy thing. It takes experience, and there's different philosophies. But I certainly, drug courts are becoming more prevalent. Kent County, our neighboring county, has a drug court with intensive urinalysis and sanctions for relapse, and I'm sending people there when we have cases in common.
Oh, good.
We do not have a drug court right now in Queen Anne's County.
Any thoughts to that?
Our judge...
Or Veterans Court, I've heard also.
Right. It's, once again, funding. Our judge says that if he takes a grant for this, after 1 year, often the grant goes away, and then it's one more thing that Queen Anne's County has to fund, and he's afraid that it will become something that won't be funded, so it begins and then ends very quickly.
Right.
So.
Okay, so we met while you were talking to bring to the lighter side of your job, even though this isn't light either, but we met while you were speaking at a school about the concerns of cyber safety with kids.
Right.
You do this?
I go to every school in Queen Anne's County with the sheriff. We go and talk about sexting, basically child pornography. These children starting in elementary school now have iPhones, and most of the time their parents hand off this handheld computer without giving them a talk about what they should and should not do with these phones. So I'm stepping into the role as parent sometimes just to say, this is the criminal side of your behavior if you do this with your phone. We had bomb threats via Instagram. We have ridiculous things going on with kids and technology that no one thinks about. So I'm a parent. I have 2 kids in school.
Right.
So it's easy for me to step in and talk to them.
Do they listen to you?
They do.
Okay.
I have good kids.
All right,
so
good.
No headaches so far as discipline. Other headaches, of course. But the sheriff and I both, we'd rather give an ounce of prevention about not sending naked pictures, under 16, child pornography when they're involved in some sex act. There's videos. We've had to go out and search warrants, collect phones. Terrible epidemic as well among young people. They
And
just don't think about the consequences.
they don't. And do you see any stop to that, or continue getting worse?
We do have scenarios where it is encouraging that certain kids knew about it and said they didn't participate because they remembered our talk.
Okay.
So yes, we are getting through to some. Even if we get through to some of them, it's well worth these assemblies we do on a regular basis.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
This is Donna Cole. This has been the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.